My stepmother wanted to give my late mother's jewelry as a wedding gift to my stepsister, but my joke of swapping them for fakes got some laughs. I'm Alex, 25 years old, and I need to share this because it's been too much to keep to myself. A little context. I lost my mom a few years ago, and that was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. She was like a friend to me, in addition to being my mother, so her loss really hit me hard. She wasn't just my mother. She was my home. When she died, the pain was unbearable. Everything in my life changed overnight, and the only thing that gave me a bit of comfort were the pieces of jewelry she left behind. She loved her jewelry. She wasn't wealthy or anything, but she had a beautiful collection of pieces that she gathered over the years, some from my dad, some she bought herself, and others passed down from her family. She would tell me the stories behind each piece. There was a delicate gold bracelet that my grandma gave her when she turned 18, a locket with a photo of me as a baby, a stunning sapphire ring that my dad gave her on their anniversary, and a few others. In total, there were 6 pieces, all very dear to her. Even when she was sick, she would sometimes wear her favorite rings or earrings just to feel more like herself. She would smile at her reflection, as if that brought her a bit of life back. After she passed, those jewels became my most treasured possessions, not for their monetary value, but because they were the only things I had left of her. Every time I looked at one of these pieces, I was flooded with memories of her. Then my dad's new wife, Marta, 57, and her daughter Morgan, 24, came into my life. If I'm here talking about my stepmother and stepsister, you can guess I didn't like them much. I never saw them as competition to replace my mother, but we were not compatible at all. My dad married Marta just a year after my mom died, which felt strange to me. I have to admit I wasn't ready for him to move on, and honestly, it seemed like he wasn't either, but he did anyway. As my father, I thought he deserved another chance at life after losing his first love. Marta played the part correctly, I suppose. She acted friendly, but there was always that strange aura that made you doubt her intentions. Morgan was worse. She was spoiled and stuck up, speaking to me like she was above me, maybe because of our age difference, but she didn't stand out in any way. Still, she somehow looked down on me. Fast forward to a year ago. Morgan was getting married, big wedding, huge guest list, the whole package, and Marta decided she wanted to give Morgan my mom's jewelry as a wedding gift, without even asking me. I found out because I overheard her excitedly talking on the phone to a friend about how beautiful Morgan would look with the sapphire ring, planning to give it to her at the bridal shower. She was talking about my mom's ring, the one my dad gave her when they were still happy and she was alive, the one she would wear even when her hands were fragile and thin from treatment. No way was I going to let that happen. I didn't waste time discussing it with her. I asked her what in the world she was talking about, and she gave me that look as if I was exaggerating. She told me, "Oh dear, it's a family heirloom. It should stay in the family." I told her it was going to stay in the family and that it was for me because she was my mother and they had no connection to her. I made it clear that those jewels weren't hers to give away. They were my mother's, now mine, and she had no right even to touch them, much less gift them to Morgan. She acted surprised, as if she genuinely didn't understand why I was upset. She had the audacity to tell me that Morgan was my sister now, and I should want her to have something special on her wedding day. I told her Morgan was not my sister, and that my mom's jewelry wasn't some trinkets she could give away as if they belonged to her. Then my dad stepped in. Any normal father would defend his daughter in this matter because if my mother left those for me, I was the only one who could give them away, and I wasn't going to do that. But not my dad. He knew how much those things meant to my mom and, as a result, to me. He told me to calm down, saying, "They're just pieces of jewelry, Alex. They're a family heirloom and should go to Morgan since she's marrying first." I asked him if he genuinely thought my mom, his wife of over 20 years, would agree with that. He had the nerve to say that the memories would live on in us, but not in some stupid jewelry. However, Morgan could wear them, and it wouldn't be a big deal. Maybe later she could return them to me, sure. As if that could ever happen. He also said it was part of the past and that we should move on. I lost it. I told him that if Marta or Morgan took even one piece of my mom's jewelry, I would never forgive him and wouldn't speak to him again. He just sighed, as if I were a spoiled child throwing a tantrum, and told me to think it over. but I reiterated that legally, they belonged to me, and there would be legal consequences. I took some time to think about what my dad said, not because I was considering giving my mom's jewelry away, but because I realized something. My dad was not going to support me. That was clear, and Marta was determined to make my days miserable until the wedding. I could see it in her smile. She was confident she would wear me down to give them to her, so I did something, not only to avoid future trouble, but also to get a little revenge. I played along and pretended to agree. A few days after the argument, I came down and told my dad and Marta that I had thought about it, and they were right. I had been overly emotional. I needed to let go of the past, and maybe it was time to move on. Marta looked so pleased. I had to fight not to laugh when she gave me her fake, sympathetic smile and said, "Oh, honey, I knew you'd understand. It's what your mother would have wanted." I wanted to scream, but that would ruin my plan. Instead, I smiled and nodded as if I agreed. I even said I thought Morgan would love the jewelry and that it was nice for her to have something meaningful to wear on her wedding. My dad looked relieved, as if he'd been waiting for another fight. I had an old friend, Lauren, whom I hadn't spoken to in a while. We were never super close, but she was very nice, and luckily her brother was a jeweler. I contacted her, and after catching up a little, I casually mentioned that I needed a special job. Not anything too elaborate, just some very realistic replicas. I was curious, of course, but I was vague on the details. I just told her I needed to make some duplicates and was willing to pay whatever it took. She connected me with her brother, and after explaining what I needed, he agreed to help me. The best part was that my little joke didn't cost too much. It was a few bucks well spent. I met with him the following week and handed over all the pieces: the sapphire ring, the gold bracelet, the locket, a pair of diamond earrings, a pearl necklace, and a small brooch with sentimental value. I wasn't sure which ones Marta had chosen, so I needed to cover all bases. He was very good at his job. When he returned the finished replicas, it was hard to notice the difference. The weight was slightly different. And if you looked very closely, there were some imperfections, but to any average person, they looked identical. He even made sure to age them a bit to make them look worn. Then, with the originals, I made sure to keep them in a safe place outside of the house while I placed the replicas in the spot where the originals would be. I made sure everything was exactly as it was. Same boxes, same arrangement, nothing that could raise suspicion. Then I waited. That night, Marta called me downstairs. I had to force myself to act normal when she offered me a glass of wine and said, "I just wanted to thank you again for being so mature about this, Alex. I know it was hard for you, but you're doing the right thing." Inside, I was thinking, I'm doing more than the right thing. For the next year, everything went normally. Life continued, and honestly, I thought I had gotten away with it. Morgan wore the necklace a couple of times, and Marta made comments here and there about how beautiful she looked with my mom's jewelry. I had to bite my tongue every time not to make a comment or laugh. It was so funny to see her thinking she had real pieces when they were just junk. The real ones were safely tucked away in a safety deposit box at the bank, except for a few sentimental pieces that I kept with me, small enough to hide. I wasn't taking any risks. I had outsmarted Marta, and I thought that was the end of it. But 2 weeks ago, I received a call. It was my dad sounding upset as if his day had been an incredible nuisance. Apparently, Marta and Morgan decided to take the jewelry to be appraised, and the appraiser told them they were fake. I almost dropped the phone. I had spent the entire year thinking they would never think to take them to an appraiser. Of course, they could have done it for insurance reasons or to know their real value, but it felt a bit petty of them to try to sell them and get money from them. Honestly, the whole situation made me angrier than before. It just confirmed I was right from the beginning. Neither of them cared about the family aspect of this. All they wanted to know was how much they could get for them. They didn't even consult me to see if I was okay with them selling the things they called family heirlooms. I had to think quickly, so I played dumb and pretended to be surprised, even acting as if I said, "What? Fake?" just to add to the realism. My dad told me the appraiser said they weren't authentic, that they looked nice but were just replicas. Morgan and Marta were losing their minds. Do you think I did something? I almost burst out laughing at that moment, but I forced myself to stay calm. "How strange," I said. "I don't know anything about that, but why were they getting appraised?" "I thought they were family pieces. That left him speechless for a moment. He hesitated to answer, and I could hear the doubt in his voice. Well, they just wanted to know their value, just to know. I'm sure about that. I kept up the act, sounding all confused and worried. I even had the gall to say, wow, how wild, maybe the jeweler made a mistake, or maybe they were always fake and Mom never knew. I think that last part unsettled him because he started defending my mom, saying she would never wear fake jewelry, which was true. But I had to make him doubt everything to steer suspicion away from me. Finally, he said he would call me later and hung up, and that was when the laughter really hit me. I couldn't believe I not only got them to believe they had the originals, but they were trying to sell them, revealing just how gold-digging they were. Although I still had doubts about whether my dad was also part of the plan or if he was simply being fooled. I don't regret what I did for a second. If I had to do it again, I would. But maybe I would add some hidden message to the jewelry just to mock them. I don't know exactly what my mother would think of all this, but knowing that I protected her jewelry and taught a lesson to two opportunists like my stepmother and stepsister would have seemed funny to her. I hope you all think so too. Update 1. It's been an intense few weeks, and I thought I should fill you in because with so many things happening, I'd have to write a book if I let time pass. After my last post, I kept thinking the call would come that they discovered what happened. I was ready for whatever was next, because I really didn't care too much at this point, but things have gotten a bit chaotic since the last time I was in this sub, so here we go. About a week after that call, my dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. This man had never done that before. He always calls when he plans to visit. I opened the door and there he was with a serious face. He didn't even greet me. He walked in as if we were at war and turned to me, unleashing that Marta wanted to take legal action against me. I kept a neutral face and replied, "Legal action? Why?" He crossed his arms and said, "For the stolen jewelry." I stared at him for a second, trying to process if he was serious. He was. I told him first off, you can't steal something that already belongs to you. My mom left me those jewels in her will legally. And second, I didn't steal anything. That sent him over the edge. He launched into this speech about how I was selfish, how I was robbing his family, how my mom would have wanted me to share. He slapped me with, "Why would an appraiser say they're fake if you didn't switch them?" That's where I almost slipped up. I was getting mad and wanted to throw something back at him. But I took a deep breath and told him, "I don't know, Dad. Maybe they were always fake." And that made him doubt for a second. But then he shook his head and said, "That's impossible. Your mom's jewelry was real." I replied, "Then why were they getting appraised? Maybe Mom didn't trust you and had them swapped." It was as if I was giving him the answer he'd been looking for. I saw it on his face. I knew what I was implying, that Marta and Morgan were planning to sell my mom's jewelry, and now that they couldn't, they were furious. And at that moment, he didn't say anything else and left. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. A couple of days later, my mom's sister, Sydney, 53, called me. She was furious. Apparently, Marta had been talking to the whole family, saying I stole Morgan's wedding jewelry and replaced them with fakes. She was playing the victim and telling everyone I had betrayed the family, but Sydney didn't buy it. She told me there was no way my mom would have wanted Morgan to have those jewels. In fact, my mom had specifically told Sydney she wanted me to keep her jewelry because she knew my dad might remarry one day and worried a new wife would try to take them. For now, I'm out of danger, but the accusations are still in the air. Not that I care, because they can accuse me of whatever they want, but legally, they're still mine. And they can't sue me. Maybe even a judge will find their demands so ridiculous that they'll laugh so hard they'll drop their glasses. I thought the laughs would only come at the wedding when I saw her in her fake jewelry, but my little joke keeps paying off. Update 2. The replica prank is still making waves, and it doesn't seem like the updates are going to end. Things had been calming down, and I thought that all good things have to come to an end, but life threw me another surprise, and this one was a good one. Marta simply outed herself in the most spectacular way possible. After my last update, Marta and Morgan had a big fight. Morgan felt betrayed for not getting the jewels and for marrying with replicas, which made her furious. It made her look foolish in front of everyone. She thinks the people who attended her wedding were expert jewelers who could tell right away that they weren't real and were gossiping about her. They barely spoke for weeks. I thought that would be the end of it, but a few days ago, I received a long message from Morgan. And when I say long, I mean the Bible is a light read. To summarize without crashing Reddit servers, the gist was that I was a horrible sister and how I ruined her wedding day. She was saying I lied about the jewelry being fake and that she deserved the real pieces because she was now part of the family. Then she said the most absurd thing she could have said. I don't care if you switched them. I just want the originals back. There was no point in maintaining the facade anymore. Everyone suspected me. I was fed up with another Methuselah message, so I simply replied, Morgan, I have no idea what you're talking about. The jewels you received are what you deserve. No more, no less. She told me they now had proof and that they would make sure I paid for what I had done. The next day, my dad called me, sounding like he hadn't slept all night with them yelling in each ear. He said, Marta wants to file charges. I burst out laughing and asked him on what grounds for keeping my own inheritance. Apparently, Marta was serious. She went to see a lawyer to see if she could sue me for theft, but the lawyer basically told her that since the jewelry was legally mine, anything she had given me was fine. She had no case. I had never had to go to a lawyer, so I didn't know if she had to pay for that consultation. But if she did, she could have saved the money by asking a 5-year-old who would have told her the same thing. This infuriated her so much that she ended up incriminating herself without knowing, because during one of her rants she confessed to my dad that she always planned to give my mom's jewelry to Morgan no matter what I said. She admitted that she never thought to ask me for permission because she believed I was selfish and that Morgan deserved to receive them as a wedding gift. I don't know exactly what clicked in my dad's head, but something changed. Maybe it was the fact that Marta openly acknowledged she didn't care about my mom's wishes. Or maybe it was realizing she had been lying to him the whole time. Or perhaps it was just that he finally saw how ridiculous and cruel all of this had been. Whatever it was, that very night, I received another call from him. This time, he was not angry with me. He was angry with Marta. He apologized, admitting he had been an idiot for not noticing Marta's manipulation in time. He said my mom's jewelry should never have been a topic of discussion. Then, he said something I never thought I would hear from him. I think I made a mistake marrying her. I don't care what happens with their marriage. That's not my problem, but the fact that he said that is huge. The next day, he and Marta fought again. He told her she had completely crossed the line, that she had no right to touch my mom's things, and Marta exploded. She vented her frustrations, saying I was turning him against her. That she was just trying to be a good mother by giving Morgan something meaningful, and that she deserved the jewelry more than I did because she was the new wife. The argument escalated so much that Marta ended up packing her bags and went to stay with Morgan for a few days, and my dad looked strangely relieved. I don't know what's going to happen now with their marriage, and I know some people are going to see me as the guilty one because my prank destroyed a marriage. But if you're one of those people, I can recommend a lawyer for you to pay for a stupid consultation too. Update 3. This officially imploded, and when I say imploded, I mean at a level of obliteration, total nuclear destruction. After my last update, all was oddly calm. Marta continued staying at Morgan's place, and my dad wasn't talking much about her. I was keeping my distance. I honestly thought maybe she was preparing to come back and pretend nothing had happened. Instead, Marta decided that if she was going down, she would take everyone with her. About a week ago, my dad called me. The first thing he said was, "You're not going to believe what Marta just did." Apparently, Marta went completely crazy and started airing out every secret she could dig up, secrets that lacked a bit of truth. She contacted every relative on my dad's side and started spinning this ridiculous narrative about how she had been emotionally abused during the marriage, how my dad never treated her as an equal, and how I was a lying manipulator who robbed the family. She went all out, digging up any past mistakes, old arguments, anything she could use to turn the family against us. Marta was so focused on destroying me and my dad that she forgot one very important detail. She had secrets too, and my dad finally decided to start investigating. So after her breakdown, my dad did something he should have done years ago. He reviewed his finances and discovered that Marta had been siphoning money from their joint account for years. We're talking about thousands of dollars disappearing into expenses my dad never approved. Some of that money went toward Morgan's wedding, some went who knows where, and some just vanished without a trace. My dad thought he hadn't contributed to his stepdaughter's wedding and that it had been paid for by her mom and dad. I even remember at the wedding, he told Morgan's dad how beautiful everything looked and thanked him for everything when he was the one paying for it. Well, it was Marta who used the money she'd been stealing for years. But the point is the same. From the very first minute, she didn't deny a thing. She just shrugged and said something like, "Well, I deserved it after everything I put up with." She married a man who paid for everything and let her daughter live rent-free while giving her total access to his money. And still, she felt entitled to take more. I'm not saying my dad didn't deserve it for being gullible, but Marta went too far. The next day, my dad went straight to see a lawyer. He's officially filing for divorce. I don't think I've ever seen my dad so determined. It's as if he finally realized how poorly they had been using him. Marta lost her mind. She showed up at the house while my dad wasn't home, banging on the door and shouting that she was being treated like garbage. I wasn't there, but if I had been, I would have told her she was garbage. My dad's security camera recorded her shouting that she was going to ruin him in court. She left before they called the cops, but something tells me this isn't over yet. Morgan, true to her role as a loyal daughter, tried to convince my dad to work things out with Marta. She told him that if he really loved her, he shouldn't let me come between them. My dad replied, "This has nothing to do with Alex. This has everything to do with your mom being a liar and a thief." Morgan told him she wouldn't allow him to talk about her mother that way, and that if he divorced her, she would cut him out of her life forever, and my dad simply said, "Fine." I didn't expect that response. I expected him to stammer or hesitate about losing her. Morgan started crying because she expected her tantrum to make him hesitate. My dad didn't say much more. He simply hung up while Morgan was crying. I don't think I'll update anymore because I'm honestly done with them, but I wanted to share this last part because I never imagined things would explode this way. Update 4. I know I said I wouldn't update again, but trust me, you're going to want to hear this, and it's not just another update with more information, it's an update that comes with justice. After my last update, Marta finally seemed to accept that the divorce was serious, but instead of keeping a low profile and thinking about her next step like any sensible person would, she decided to make things even worse for everyone, but especially for herself. She went around telling everyone that my dad was abandoning her and that I had manipulated him into leaving her. She even had the gall to say that my dad had been emotionally abusive to her and that she was the true victim in all this. Seriously, she tried to fight the divorce and demand alimony after having stolen money from my dad for years. Her logic was that she had given up many things to be with him and deserved to be compensated. Well, she got compensated, but not in the way she wanted. Fortunately, my dad's lawyer doesn't waste time with clients and their stupid questions. Since he had clear evidence that Marta had been siphoning money, her attempt to gain alimony backfired completely. Not only did the court deny her request, but now she's facing a possible lawsuit to pay back my dad all the money she stole. It's about to lose absolutely everything. After losing the alimony case and being completely cut off by my dad, Marta attempted one last desperate play. She showed up at my dad's house saying she needed to collect some of her things, but my dad isn't stupid. He knew she hadn't left anything of value. He told her to send him a list, and he would mail her everything. Marta started banging on the door, screaming that he at least owed her a face-to-face conversation. When that didn't work, she began fake crying, saying she just wanted to talk. But my dad simply told her to go home. She finally left furiously, not without yelling that he would regret this. Until now, after those threats, the only one regretting anything is her. But hey, talk is free, and it gets better. Morgan made a whole drama about saying she would cut ties with my dad forever if he divorced Marta. That lasted about a month. Then she realized something very important. She needed money. Morgan had always depended on my dad's generosity. He helped her with rent, paid for part of her wedding without her knowledge, and even gave her extra money when she was in trouble. But now that money train stopped forever, and Marta wasn't willing or capable of helping her financially. Morgan crawled back to my dad, having the gall to call him crying, saying she didn't mean it when she cut him out of her life. She told him that even though things with her mother weren't working out, she would still like to have her dad in her life. My dad told her word for word, "Morgan, I hope you figure it out, but I'm not your ATM," and hung up. She tried to call him several more times, but he blocked her. Update 5. Before getting to the good stuff, many people have asked me what my current relationship is like with my dad, since he clearly hasn't been a good father to me, and that reflects in how we interact today. We haven't cut off all contact, but we're not as close as we once were. We're cordial, and that's it. I know he's regretting certain things, but he shouldn't be regretting anything. He should have defended me a long time ago instead of taking the jewelry issue lightly. Without my joke, I might still be defending them today. The good part is that my dad won the lawsuit and managed to recover a large part of the money he lost with Marta. He got back what he lost, yes, but not the total amount he spent on her and her daughter, who were genuine leeches. If you look at this story from my dad's perspective, from Marta's or from Morgan's, it may seem like a sad story. But if you look at it from mine, I think I've never laughed so much at a prank. And I'm not one to joke around, but this they deserved.